we are observing, in the last, let's say 10 years, is definitely a tighter compliance and regulatory environment in Brazil.
I'll talk now to Carlos Areia, CEO at Phare Global. Please explain to us what is happening in the Brazilian market regarding compliance rules.
Thank you very much, Luciane, once again for the opportunity. We are observing, in the last, let's say 10 years, is definitely a tighter compliance and regulatory environment in Brazil. So what that translates, which translates into a higher demand, for tools and technologies in the financial, markets environment, to be in compliance with these, with these new rules and regulations. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that the regulatory landscape is becoming much more severe and much more, I would say, tighter, in the last 10 to 15 years. So, yeah.
Brazilian financial market is very recognized abroad for its regulation, very severe regulation, always, since we had a story of inflation and so on. Everybody knows it. This situation nowadays, is it a consequence of car wash investigations?
Well, it definitely, it is a trend, right? But the last, 13 years, of corruption scandals, and of course that brings, that into the surface, right? And that definitely translates into new rules and new, in a new regulatory landscape, which it's tailored to bring more efficiency to the business environment. I think that will definitely be the outcome of what we are going through right now. It's going to be a better market, environment, with more transparency and more efficiency, for sure. Yeah.
Because nowadays we are seeing everybody's concerned about compliance, even in other industries.
Correct. Yeah, it's a widespread concern, and I think that's that's a very positive thing in Brazil right now. So, and I hope we can serve as an example to the world on that. Yeah. So definitely.
What are the main tools available in the market?
Today, when we talk about market surveillance, we're talking about a $430 million market. So it's a $500 million, marketplace. And of course, there are several players out there, but there are some players that they stand, on this industry. One of them being Smarts, which was acquired by NASDAQ in 2011. And they are now on the front run of the market surveillance, segment. In Brazil, BM&FBOVESPA adopted the technology to regulate the financial markets, and on that front, which definitely translates to the quality of the solution, and with that, we are doing our work to make sure that the technology is also available for the market participants in Brazil, which are the broker-dealers, funds and banks, which are being scrutinized by a higher regulatory environment. So, yeah.
Nowadays, what can happen to an institution or a bank that doesn't adopt compliance rules?
Well, there's several. Of course, there's several consequences to that, from fines to imprisonment. Right now we have an environment which is definitely taking care of the of any perpetrator that try to manipulate the market and tries to conduct its him or herself in a way that will impact the transparency and the integrity of the marketplace. So there's several consequences. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I do. What we do here is to bring access to technology so the banks can identify, these this potential manipulative, manipulative behavior, right? So that's why technology now plays a huge role on identifying the manipulative behavior before it actually, goes to the authorities. So at least you have the proof, and you can, receive an alert that something strange is happening, and you can act before that, or at least make sure that you're in compliance with the regulatory environment, which now mandates that you monitor what's happening, with your traders and with your, with your investors in the marketplace. So,
what is your opinion about our regulatory office, CVM?
They're becoming a more modern institution and much more, much more incisive into making sure that we have a better marketplace and a better environment, for the investors. They are exposed to the Brazilian, marketplace. So I think they're doing a great job on making sure that the regulation is there and the regulation is being enforced. So there's a lot of campaigns right now, for example, against insider trading, against, spoofing, layering. I mean, these are, behaviors that the market participants, they can participate or not. But that before, the law always existed, but it wasn't really, enforced. So now we're seeing that from the regulator, which is, I think, is a good thing, but you have to be prepared, of course.
And we've seen also other efforts from the central bank and also FEBRABAN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everyone is working in conjunction to make sure that we have a fair marketplace and a better environment to do business, which will translate into more efficiency and evidently more jobs and a better economic environment and and a new economic cycle of growth and prosperity for the Brazilian society. Yes.
What are the main beneficiaries of a more regulated environment for the market here in Brazil?
Well, I think that's, regulation is something that you have to, there are degrees of regulation, right? I mean, you cannot regulate to a point where you cannot do business, right? But you have to regulate just enough to make sure that you have a fair business environment and a fair place, right, to do business. And I think that's where we need to go. Sometimes the regulation can go a little bit beyond and can make a little bit, life a little bit tough, right, for the participants. But I see that as a positive thing. And then, of course, it comes back a little bit, and to make sure that the free market can work itself, into making sure that the growth is there and there is prosperity, right? Without really being something more restrict or you have to have regulation in order to have a fair marketplace to be prosperous. So I think that's the main thing, on the regulatory side.
Carlos Areia, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very much again. It's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Luciane Miranda to Dukascopy TV.